Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1612 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery. Fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Joining me today, making her Toronto Mic'd debut, is singer-songwriter Arlene Bishop. Welcome to Toronto Mic'd, Arlene.
Oh, thank you very much, Mike. It's lovely to be here.
You know, we've never met. We just met for the first time. But I feel like I know you because we're connected.
We have people in common. Yeah, we have people.
Let's just reveal this off the top, that I have spent time with your son at primarily Christie Pitts, but also at your ex-husband's house. So let's tell people, who is your ex-husband who is also an FOTM?
Well, my ex-husband is Blair Packham, who I think has been on the show for 1,000 times.
Almost there. He's a future FOTM Hall of Famer, Blair Packham. But Blair Packham of the Jitters is your ex-husband?
That's right. He's my ex-husband and he's my current friend.
So you guys, I mean, I like this. I have an ex-wife too, and I think you guys are pretty tight, right? Like, is it difficult to stay friendly with an ex? I'm just curious how you had managed to have such an amicable relationship with your ex-husband.
Well, I bet it's difficult for people who decide not to do that. But we decided to do that. We made a conscious choice at the beginning of our separation to do that, to be kind to each other. And we told our friends and family that that's what our plan was and that we hoped that they would get on board with that. So it was easy. We had a support system around us to do that.
It's inspiring. And I think anybody, coincidentally, I got like 3 or 4 PR emails in the last week about January 6th being divorce day. Have you heard this nonsense?
I have not heard this. It's a different day that I know it as. Yeah, interesting.
Oh, well, it's insurrections and divorces. A lot of separations happen on this day. But apparently it's like the first Monday back after the new year, and some couples stay together for the holidays or whatever. Maybe there's kids involved or whatever. So I think it's a PR thing for like lawyers and divorce lawyers and stuff. But
and then they explode. Is that it?
Yeah. Like
they've had enough?
Right. Like, so this is now back to normal. This is a Monday. You're well past New Year's now. You're back in the grind, and today you go visit the divorce lawyer.
Right, yeah. Well, repression will only take you so far. You can only contain it for so long, right?
Right. So, Arlene, okay, so I'm going to just let the listenership, and I guess I'm letting you know as well, since we never talked about this episode, but like I'm amazed. Oh, but we never shouted out your son. So, Owen, who I've met multiple times, but I'm always struck by how intelligent Owen is. I guess I'm surprised he's so bright because Blair doesn't seem so sharp. But I think so. This is credit to you.
Yeah, that is. I do take credit for that. He is quite intelligent. I have been quizzing him his whole life. It's true.
Okay, well, it's working because I'm like, oh, this guy's got a big brain on him.
Isn't he marvelous? He's such a smart fellow and he's very compassionate. He's a lovely person to be around. I'm a big fan.
Well, you should be a big fan, and you must be very proud.
I am. Thank you. I am.
Okay, so now that we've disclosed this small world story that your ex-husband is a valued FOTM, he wrote Red Hot Fools.
Yes.
That's not easy, right?
That's right, yeah.
We can only aspire to do so. And his name might pop up now or then. So we're going to talk about, in fact, we're going to open by talking about your career as a singer-songwriter, and we'll talk about some of the music and friends you've made along the way, and then I'm going to sit back and, like, with great interest, I'm going to listen to you tell us about unmasking your late autism diagnosis. And then maybe I'll share a bit more of why I'm so keenly interested in the convo. But can we maybe go back to what brings you to Toronto in the first place? Like you're not from Toronto.
No, I'm not from Toronto. Oh, I came here for a really weird reason. Let's see. I came here when I was 20. I had my 21st birthday here. I came here chasing a boy that I was in love with.
Where did you come from?
I came from Ottawa.
Okay, but you're not. You're from
No, I'm
Manitoba.
not from Ottawa. I grew up in Ottawa.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, I was born in Manitoba. I was born in Churchill, Manitoba, where James Bay and Hudson Bay meet, the land of the Inuit people and the First Nations.
Is that also the land of Peter Mansbridge, or am I confusing my
Is that right?
locales?
I wonder. Something in my lizard brain says the paw is connected to Peter Mansbridge, but I don't know that that's true.
I feel like he's from Churchill.
Interesting.
Somebody do a fact check. We're at live.torontomike.com. I'll check in later to see if somebody fact checks that for me. So how old are you when you moved to the greater Ottawa region, or whatever we're calling Ottawa?
Let's see. I don't know. I think from Churchill, my father was in the Navy, and then we moved to, what is it called? Southwestern Ontario, to Sarnia region, and we lived there for a little while.
On Lake Huron?
Yeah, I think so. That's right. A little town called Brigden, really small town, population 500. Spent a lot of time there, and then moved to Ottawa. I think my mother got a job in the government. My father was a police officer, and we moved to Ottawa, moved to the suburbs.
Okay, so you were raised in Ottawa, and you were chasing a boy to Toronto. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's right. I think I was escaping university as well at the same time. I found it pretty overwhelming to go to university, and when I met this fellow, Roger Rainbow, who was a musician, and he was just such an interesting character, and he had a lot of interesting friends. He was really good friends with Colin Linden. That was his best buddy. Wow. And so I met these really interesting people, and Roger and I got along quite well. Hung out. Oh, yeah, well, others friends of his, Lynn Miles. That's how I met Lynn Miles. So he and I hung out, and then he was going to go back home to visit his family in Hong Kong. And he said after that he was going to move to Toronto. And I thought, yeah, me too. I'm going to move to Toronto too.
Okay, so you're dating this gentleman, Roger Rainbow.
That's right.
Okay, so I done a lot of learning about Roger Rainbow since you were scheduled, basically, on Toronto Mic'd. Very, very, very sad story. And are you open to sharing what happened to Roger?
Oh yeah, sure. So yeah, Roger Rainbow. Let's see. I was 21 and he was 31, and we were living together in Toronto, and we were good friends with Colin Linden and Janice Powers and Gary Craig and that crew. Great bunch of people. Tony Duggan Smith, Paco Orchestra, lovely people. Everybody just embraced us and showed us around the town. And then one day, Roger Rainbow went to sleep, and he didn't wake up in the morning. He died. He died in his sleep.
Oh my goodness!
And it's a crazy story. I woke up and I rolled over, and he had a funny look on his face.
Oh no!
And I said, Roger, and his arm was. This is a bit of a trigger warning. We should have trigger warned this at first. His arm was discolored, and I said, wake up, Roger. Your arm is funny. And then I shot to the ceiling and had an out-of-body experience that lasted for about 2 years.
So you're very young. You're in your early 20s.
Yeah, I was 21.
And you're living with Roger.
Yeah, living together, yeah.
So he passes away in your bed.
Yeah, he passes away in my bed. That's right. And I couldn't remember the number for 911. I called the operator. And then next thing I knew, the apartment was full of fire department and ambulance people. And they sort of were looking at me like we were, young people on Queen Street West, probably a bit judgmental. And it took about 2 years to find out that his cause of death was a thing they called natural causes unknown.
So that must have been traumatic. I mean, I think there's a Simpsons joke where Homer calls the operator and says, "What's the number for 911?"
Yeah, that was my experience. I called the number for 911, and she said, "Well, I said, yeah, I have an emergency," and she said, "Well, you have to call 911," and I said, "I think my boyfriend's dead," and she said, "Okay, hang on," and then
patches you through.
Yeah.
Okay, you were in shock. Okay, so I want to learn a little more about Roger Rainbow, and you mentioned Colin Linden. I took a few shots at reaching out to Colin Linden over the past week. I know he's got, great audio of Roger Rainbow, but I'm going to play a little something that was the closest I could get, because I never heard back from Colin. Colin's a rather famous, important, busy guy. Do you still have contact with Colin Linden?
I do. We chat by message every now and then, but yeah, he's an important, busy guy.
Although I feel like he's the last what's the black? What's the band he's got with Tom Wilson and
Blackie and the Rodeo Kings.
Blackie and the Rodeo King? He's the last of the Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, so he's the only member who hasn't visited the basement yet. So I'm going to work on that in 2025. But let's listen to this together, Arlene.
I gotta tell you folks that a couple weeks ago we had a real bang up time in Toronto. A lot of people came out and played and listened. This is a song by a friend of many of us here, and the reason we're here tonight, this is a song by Roger Rainbow. It's called Pink Shadow.
Arlene, it's quite beautiful music. Would you share with us what I'm playing? Do you know what I'm playing here?
Yeah, that's a song called Pink Shadow. That's Colin Linden performing that. I don't know when that was. Was that...
It's in Ottawa.
Was it in Ottawa? Yeah.
But you're on this bill. I took a look at the poster because they misspelled Colin's name. They put two L's in there.
Right, they put two L's. Yeah, was that at Rasputin's, I wonder? I can't remember where we played that. Yeah, Roger's music, beautiful music, had a very particular way of playing guitar, and his phrasing. He had a wonderful accent from Hong Kong. Quan Chi Hung is his birth name. And yeah, beautiful voice, very warm person.
And I'm curious, does the passing of your boyfriend, this talented, but very young, 31, you sounds like he was 31 years old, my goodness.
That's right.
Roger Rainbow, how does that affect your music career? Like, does that inspire you to you know, pursue a career in music?
It's interesting. I always had a guitar. I always played my dad's guitar when I was a kid. I wrote songs myself in my bedroom, alone. My dad would hack out, Dead Skunk in the middle of the road. And at parties, we'd go downstairs. I'd play with him. And it was a lovely experience. So guitar was always a thing for me. I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed songwriting. And when I met Roger, I think I'd written maybe one or two songs at that time. I played them for him, and he was very encouraging, as was Colin. Colin was really encouraging as well. But then when Roger died, he died during a 3-night gig he had at Inn on the Park. And let's see, he was doing like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday probably. No, that's not right. I can't remember what it was. Whatever he was doing. The booker, who later became a friend through another person, which we had a strange moment of, wow, you were the booking agent. Because she was telling a story about how she had booked this fellow who had died halfway through the residency. And I said, oh my God, is that Roger Rainbow? Anyway, she dropped off his guitar and his tuner and stuff. And I opened his guitar, and I suddenly felt like that he was giving me this gift of all this stuff that I didn't know. And I started playing his guitar, and I felt like I could play things that I couldn't play before.
Wow. Okay, well, what does they say? There's always a crack where the light gets in. So there's the light shining in right there.
Yeah, that was a really intense time. After that, Janice and Colin, Colin was heartbroken. He was on tour at the time. He was heartbroken to lose Roger. And I was having a hard time staying at that apartment. It was freaking me out. Of course, I wasn't sleeping, and I was totally freaked out. And I didn't have that many friends. I had just known a few people. I'd been there for 6 months. And Janice took me in, and Colin took me in. So I stayed at their place for a couple of months while I got my thing back together. And I just wrote songs while I was there.
And your ex-husband tells me you were friends with Willie P. Bennett, and that's of course, Blackie and the Rodeo Kings.
Yeah, Willie P. Bennett. What a lovely person. He's in that circle as well. Very, very loving, very kind person. I mean, my songs were total crap. And they were all super encouraging.
And are you going to, well, now we call it TMU, but we were calling it Rye High. At least we were calling it that.
Yeah, Rye High, that's
Rye
right.
High back then. But I have a nice note here. So I got a few notes here, and then we'll revisit your career in music. But one note comes in from, he calls himself Hazardous. So I don't know if it's even, that's the right gender. I'm assuming my own gender on Hazardous here. But Hazardous writes, I am very much looking forward to hearing her speak about her music and Camp Shasta.
Mm-hmm.
So what's Camp Shasta?
Camp Shasta, my partner Yod and I, my sweetheart Yod, we have a place north. We have a couple acres that has a really old cabin on it, built in 1862. And that's where we go, where there's no electricity. And we just recharge there.
Okay, so that's Camp Shasta. And then Canada Kev, who listeners of this podcast know Canada Kev, smoke him if you got him. He says, I went to Ryerson with her for urban planning. When Arlene comes on, could you ask her if she remembers the show she got me and a couple of friends from Ryerson to attend in early 1990 at the Cabana Room? We had no idea what to expect. Bob Snyder opened, and I will forever have "What an Idiot He Is" in my brain. Then half of the audience stood up and took the stage, and it was Barenaked Ladies. They blew us away. Then Arlene came on to mesmerize us with her wonderful set. I had no idea she was so good. I'm so happy she got us off our butts and out that cold evening, and I will never forget it. Cabana Room, shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. So please, talk about the Cabana Room, maybe.
Wow, how sweet is that? That's nice. Those are good times. You know, after Roger, I didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't know what I was doing with my life at all. I was quite unmoored at a time in my arc where I had already been unmoored. So music was a thing. Music brought me a lot of pleasure. John Wynott, who was a producer with Colin Linden, they both really encouraged me to perform, to sort of get it out. I don't know if that's why they did. They just encouraged me to perform. And I played an open stage at a thing called Fat Albert's, where Ron Sexsmith was there. And Ron, lovely fellow, told me about the Cabana Room. And I went to the Cabana Room and I met the fellow behind the bar, Jimmy Scopus. And Jimmy Scopus said, yeah, Arlene, you can play a show. So he booked me to play a show and I loved it. But at the same time, it never occurred to me that music was a thing that I could do like as a life. It was just a thing that I did to feel better and to enjoy. So I thought, since I had left school in Ottawa, what I should be doing is going to school in Toronto. So I looked up in the syllabuses, what do I want to do? What am I going to be, a doctor, a lawyer, a geophysicist? I didn't even know what there was. And I came across this urban planning, which involved map making. That was part of the description, which I thought, well, that's fun. I'm a visual artist as well. Map making is fun. So the same time I started at Ryerson, I also started doing a weekly residency at school, which made me super busy, but that's how I kept it together.
Oh, at school, at the Cabana Room?
Yeah, the Cabana Room. I did a weekly residency, and meanwhile, I was going to Ryerson.
And tell me a little bit about Jimmy Scopus.
Oh, Jimmy Scopus. What a lovely character he was. So it turns out Jimmy Scopus was basically volunteering at the Cabana Room. He was he worked in restaurant supply. And I guess he was a fan of music. So upstairs, he did the booking up there. So he would finish his work day and then he would go upstairs to the Cabana Room. And we had quite an interesting crowd of people there. Just music that he liked and people that he liked hanging out with. I mean, in the really early days, it was just me and Jimmy. I was just performing for Jimmy and for James Paul at the soundboard. That's it.
And you mentioned Ron Sexsmith, who is a sweetheart.
Yeah, Ron Sexsmith. Ron and I played there many, many, many times. Yeah, and Bob Snyder, all those people. I had quite a roster of people that I played with frequently.
All right, let me cherry pick a few of these people here. Okay, so What about Ed Robertson and Stephen Page?
Ed Robertson and Stephen Page, yeah, they started out as a duo, really. Yeah, so I can't remember exactly how I got connected to them. I think maybe Jimmy connected us, although in the ad, Jimmy called them the Barenaked Ladies. And I mean,
Alternative name.
well, he had a lot of fun misspellings. My favorite ad for me was that I was Arlene Bishop. And Ron Sexsmith, occasionally he was just Sexsmith. So Ed and Ed and Stephen played there, and I think Jim then joined on bass, and then later came. It didn't take very long.
Yeah, Tyler comes later, right?
Tyler came a little bit later. Yeah, we played when I invited them to do a residency with me. It was a marvelous, magical thing that happened. In the beginning, they opened for me, and then it didn't take long before it was obvious I should open for them. Yeah.
What is it like when, like, an artist, let's say the Barenaked Ladies, and they have, their #1 Billboard Hot 100 single 1 week, and it's being played everywhere ad nauseum, and you're like, yeah, they opened for me. Like, is that just a fun icebreaker? Is that a conversation piece? It's like they were everywhere.
No, it's a wonderful thing. Look, I got mixed feelings about it, of course, because I wish it was me, but I couldn't handle it. They have a work ethic that I didn't have any kind of work ethic like that. They were just, and it was magic. Magic things happen in the music industry. What can you do about it? But yeah, it could be an icebreaker. But when I was in California, when Blair and I were in California, and we went to some big auditorium, like a big show, big stadium show, and I turned to some goobers standing beside me who I didn't know, and I said, "Oh, they used to open for me," and they looked at me like, "Yeah, right,"
like you're nuts.
Yeah, and they walked away, and I thought, but it's true, it's true.
It's worth it just for that moment. I think.
You know what? They carried me along. I opened for them for a bunch of shows. They invited me. I've been invited for shows. Yeah, lovely people.
And let me ask you about one of the Barenaked Ladies songs that was on the yellow tape, and then was on Gordon, the major full-length debut of the Barenaked Ladies. If I Had $1 Million.
Yeah, well, when they played it at the Cabana Room, we sang backup. People just sang back up in the room. So it just, I guess it made natural sense with Michael Philip Voivoda producing. Michael, I guess they just decided, let's invite the community, and that's what they did. So there's a whack of us there.
Do you remember, Kurt Swinghammer is there.
Oh yeah, Kurt was there. Oh my gosh, I can't even, yeah.
Some guy named Blair Packham's there.
He was there, definitely. He got us there on time. I'm sure if I had been in charge, we would have been late and missed it. But yeah, it was a big crowd of people were there.
You say that, but his first Toronto mic'd appearance, he was he had the wrong time, but I had to wake him up or something. He was at least a half an hour late. So Blair's not always on time.
What? I've never heard that
that's
before.
Real talk.
What? I've never. What are you talking about?
It's been recorded. Okay, so let's cover that at this point now, because you're playing. You got the your residency at the Cabana Room, and like, how do you meet Blair Packham? He's one of the many musicians who you cross paths with there?
Let's see. There was a fella from Ottawa who was connected with Roger. His name was Johnny M. He's a songwriter. John St. James. He's gone by a couple of different names. Wonderful songwriter. He was connected with Louise Horton. Now Louise Horton, who's married to, his name is escaping me right now, but she was Roger's ex-wife. And Johnny was coming to town.
John Cody.
John Cody. Thank you very much, John Cody.
Well, Blair gave me that answer.
Oh, thank you very much, Blair. So, so John was coming to town. So, yeah, definitely book a show with him. So I think Blair came to see John Cody. Oh, you know what? That's actually the way I met Blair Packham.
Mm-hmm.
The way I preliminarily met him was that Johnny lent me his 4-track recorder, which I think Blair had before that, or Blair was getting next. So I met Blair at the door handing over this unit, or handing it to me, this unit. And then, but he came to a show, and I saw his shoulders, I saw him in silhouette at the Cabana Room, and I fell for him.
So was it love at first sight?
Yes.
That's nice. Okay, that's beautiful. And now Owen is evidence of this love.
Yes.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful stuff here. Now I'm going to play a little more of your music, because I do want to talk about what's new. I'm fascinated by what's coming in this conversation. But let me play this song, if you don't mind, and ask you about it.
Man, the wind really blows my mind. I must be made of wind chimes on the inside. Tiny bones tied up in a line. Holes for wind and some sunshine. Or maybe I am made of tin. That explains my metal grin, and spaces where the birds come in and little fishes stretch their fins. 98 points water. 98 points water. I know that I'm not made of wood, else I'd crack like I know I could. Else I'd burn like I know I should. 'Cause even though the world is good, there are those who crumble where they've stood. Flesh and blood, 98 points water. Flesh and blood, 98 points water. Days like these, it's only gravity. Days like these, it's only gravity. I fear that I am made of stone to hear some other cry and groan, to see the fallow I have sown, remember things I have been shown. Flesh and blood, 98 points water.
98 points. What a great song.
Oh, thank you.
So maybe we'll talk a little bit about, we talked about your romantic relationship with this lead singer of the Jitters, Blair Packham, but he also would work with you on your music, right? Like production.
Yeah, that's right. He knew how to do that stuff. He knew how to capture it, and he wanted to capture it.
And do you know how many off the top of your head? How many Arlene Bishop albums were produced by Blair Packham?
Well, let's see. Well, he did Pinky, which was my very first one. He did the very first, the demo, and then there's Pinky, and then there's what comes after that, Snarky Girl Pop, and then there's Cut a Man's Heart Out. So at least 4. Blair, how many is that? Is that 4? Was there more than that? Yeah, it could be.
4 albums, I'm told. So there you go. And this song we just listened to, tell me a little bit about that song, because it was featured in New Waterford Girl.
Yeah, that song is that song describes my relationship with the universe and how I wonder what it is and what I am. That gust of wind blew through me, and I thought, I'm part of the wind. I'm nothing. I could simply be erased and I would be gone. A thought that I've always had, that what is my place in the universe?
Okay, hold on to that thought, because I think that's gonna come back, that theme. We're just gonna get you there very, very soon here. So I did want to ask you about, because there's a gentleman I've tried to get on Toronto Mic'd, and I did get the question to him, because Joe Faluna. Do you know Joe Faluna?
I don't know if I recall.
Joe Faluna, who worked at CFNY, back in the 80s, is now like working very closely with Bruce Allen. And Bruce Allen is a guy I always wanted to get on Toronto Mike for many reasons, but just because I'm fascinated with Tears Are Not Enough. So, okay, so that's neither here nor there, unless you can put in a word with Big Bruce there and see if it's not too late. We can still make it happen. But you worked, did you work with for Bruce?
No, I don't think that I did. I think I got a nice comment from Bruce. You're sort of reminding me that I got a nice comment from Bruce.
Okay,
at
but
one
he
point.
didn't own Feldman and Associates? Or am I...
Maybe that is what the connection was. Yeah, he might have been connected to SL Feldman and Associates. Yeah, where I worked for a while doing contracts and promo for other artists. And yeah, actually,
I think so. I think Sam
right.
Feldman and Bruce Allen are the owners of. So sometimes they're so far removed you don't even know who you're working for anymore.
That's right.
But so any interesting stories, like maybe about somebody named Burton Cummings or any Canadian artists?
I toured with Burton Cummings. I got to open for him, and he's a really interesting character. This was a return to his career. I guess he had been laying low for a little while, and so he was going to do this tour, just he and his keyboard. So they wanted an opening act, and they asked me if I would do it, if Blair and I would do it as a duo, which sounded like a neat idea. And I knew a couple songs. Of course I knew a couple songs, but being backstage watching Burton perform, it's like, man, I know every single one of these songs, and I know every single word. It was quite a remarkable experience. But touring with him in these nice theaters and going into our dressing rooms and peeking into his dressing rooms and seeing his clothing and his boots and stuff, and very fancy. Nice fellow, very friendly fellow. He would just sort of arrive to a show, go down a hallway, perform, and then be gone again.
You know, I had to ban, in this studio, we have banned the song Stand Tall by Burton Cummings because you'll hit your head on this low ceiling if you stand tall, right? It's good rule. So no stand tall in this basement here. Okay. Although you didn't have an issue, but that was good.
That's right. Well, tall is a relative term.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. So now I think I'm ready now. So maybe I'll give you a few gifts here, and then I'm very interested in discussing with you. And by the way, I can't remember if we were clear on this, but you do sing on the actual single release of If I Had $1 Million. I just want to make sure we were clear on that. Not just in the Cabana room when they sang it live, but you're on the recording. You're on Gordon.
Yeah, I'm on Gordon. I sing on that song. Yeah.
Okay, we don't want to bury these leads here. And I'm now aching to talk to you about how you unmasked your late autism diagnosis and coping mechanism and all of that. But I'm just going to give you a few gifts, and I think you might have a gift for me. That's me asking if I can get a gift from you.
Yeah.
But let me go first. But you can prepare. You can warm up in the bullpen or whatever. So, Ridley Funeral Home have sent over a measuring tape for you, the green measuring tape on top of the red box.
Thank you very much.
Arlene, you never know if you have to measure something.
I do. I measure stuff a lot.
Well, you know what? I can
And
get
I
you
like a
backup, too.
circular measuring tape. Thank you very much, Ridley Funeral Home. That's a very thoughtful gift. Thank you.
And they're pillars of the community since 1921. Radio Gal is on the live stream, and this neighborhood you're in right now is called New Toronto, and that's where you find Ridley Funeral Home at 14th and Lakeshore. And I think that Radio Gal thought New Toronto, I made it up, like New Toronto. There's no New Toronto, but you're in New Toronto right now.
It's kind of exciting to be here.
And I have a fact check from the live stream. I don't want to miss this, so we're going to take care of this right now. Churchill. So Peter Mansbridge worked in Churchill, Manitoba at the airport, and it's his voiceover in the airport that is how he was discovered by a CBC radio station manager. So he was making a flight announcement in the airport at Churchill, Manitoba, and somebody heard his voice, and then next thing you know it, he's hosting the National. That is the Peter Mansbridge connection to Churchill.
Well, isn't that something? I have my own fact check.
Let's hear it.
It's Monty Horton, who's a guitarist,
Okay.
a fabulous guitarist who played in a band called Flying Debris with David Hines, who's another connection from back in those times.
Well, I have another fact check for you, okay? You spoke of Inn on the Park, but what you meant to say is Cafe on the Park.
Oh, did I? Thank you very much.
Look at this. We're doing all the fact checks. We don't need, speaking of Burton Cummings, Burton Cummings is a great source for Robert Lawson, and he's like our official fact checker, but we're taking over here for, let me see, any more fact checks? Yep. So Blair does confirm, though, it is 4 albums that he produced for you. So there you go. And that song I played, which is on the soundtrack, and it's on many soundtracks, right? Not just
It is. It's been a couple directors who've really connected with that song. It's ended up on a number of productions.
Like, would you say that's your biggest hit? I don't even know what a hit means anymore. But is that like your
I
most
think
known
it probably
piece of art?
is. That's probably my most known song. Yeah, that's been around the world. Yeah, yeah,
Okay, it's good to have a song that makes it around the
yeah. Isn't
world.
that nice? That's a really nice thing.
That's your Red Hot Fools.
That is. Yeah.
Okay, so a couple more gifts here, and then we'll move on here. But I want to let you know, if you have, Arlene, if you have old electronics, old cables at home, don't throw them in the garbage, because the chemicals end up in our landfill. Go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, put in your postal code. You can find out where to drop them off to be properly recycled. That's a tip for you.
I appreciate that.
And I don't know, I should ask these big questions now. I'm prepared for any answer. I want you to be honest with me. Do you consume fresh craft beer?
I do not consume alcohol.
Okay, do you have anybody close to you who does consume alcohol? And if you don't, that's okay. We're not here to...
I probably do.
Okay, because I have fresh beer for you from Great Lakes Brewery.
Well, this is a fabulous beer. I know people who, I definitely know people who enjoy that.
You know what they say, those who like it, and this is someone else's slogan. I'm going to steal it for Great Lakes.
Like it a lot.
Those who like it a lot. Okay. And the same goes with Italian food. Do you enjoy Italian food?
I do, but I'm a gluten-free person.
what?
But you know what? I know.
Arlene,
I'm a princess. This
striking
is
out
true.
here.
This is one of my problems. But the tape measure, home run.
Okay, so
tape measure.
thank goodness for the tape measure, because you won't want the lasagna. That'll kill you.
No. The 6'4" Owen gave me specific instructions.
Well, tell Owen
The
if you're
lasagna
listening
is
at
a
home.
go.
Owen, I've got a lasagna for you, but you can't share with your dad. Okay, that's the rule. He's got to come back here and get his own. So you have a lasagna from Palma Pasta. They're amazing for those who can consume gluten. And I'm sure they have gluten-free options there, but you're not going to find that in the lasagna, that's for sure. And then the fresh craft beer, you got your measuring tape. I have a question from James Early. He was looking at, just coincidentally, before he knew you were dropping by, he had discovered one of these albums that were produced by Blair Packham. I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but it was dedicated to Bob Hope. And the question is, please ask Arlene, why was this album dedicated to Bob Hope?
Oh, yeah. That was, I think that was Snarky Girl Pop.
Yeah.
That was dedicated to Bob Hope. Bob Hope I loved Bob Hope when I was a kid. You know, everybody else all the other girls were into other pop stars. And I just found Bob Hope to be nice and funny. So I was a fan of Bob Hope, and I liked his humor. It made me laugh. So, yeah, I don't know why. Well, you know what? Because between these, 98 points and something else, maybe a heavy song, I would be funny. I would talk about funny things. So I think that Bob Hope was kind of an early inspiration for breaking the tension.
You know who does a great Bob Hope?
Who?
Dave Thomas.
Oh,
from
yes,
SCTV.
He does. And I've done stuff with Dave Thomas. What a lovely fellow he is. Oh, yeah, yes, I have.
He much like you and Blair, he's an FOTM, Dave Thomas. And I had him on with his brother, Ian.
Yes. Oh, you know what? I was thinking of Ian. I got him mixed up.
Okay,
Sorry,
so
Dave.
Ian's the singer-songwriter. And
Ian is the person that I've done stuff with.
okay, but he's great too, and he's an FOTM too. Dave will tell you Ian is the funny one.
Yes. I did meet him, now that you remind me of this.
Did he do a Bob Hope for you?
No, he didn't.
He'll do it. He'll do it on demand.
He did SCTV, Bob Hope. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, Ian does a Bob Hope as well. That's where you go. Yeah.
Ian's a funny guy. Ian was at Tears Are Not Enough. All bringing it back to Bruce, who said no to me. Bruce, if you're listening in Vancouver or wherever the hell you are, nobody says no to Toronto Mike and gets away with it. So come on, shame on you. Okay, so please, I know you're willing to be very open about all this, and I'm going to sit back and do a lot of listening here. But you recently received a diagnosis. Would you mind sharing this story with us?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure where to start because it goes way back.
We'll go way back.
Okay, well, let me take you way back. I've been dealing with big subjects all my life, trying to figure out where I am, what's my place in the universe, what is my purpose, how come I can't connect with the rest of the earthlings? Why do so many people seem uninterested in the big questions? Why can't I be comfortable at a party? Why can't I just engage in a conversation with a stranger? Why am I accidentally lying to people? Why is this happening? And I thought there's got to be something wrong with me. So I started early. After Roger died, I was clearly depressed. It's a depressing situation, but I didn't
For
think
sure.
that it was, I didn't know if it was a chemical thing. I saw a doctor, went to a walk-in clinic. He gave me antidepressants, treating it as if it was a chemical issue. But I had what they call, what do they call it? A paradoxical reaction. So it did not antidepress me. It really super depressed me. So I stopped taking them. And I walked into a community center and I got connected with, I think, a therapist in training. Nice lady. And then we started talking. She put me on a sliding scale. I think I saw her for a while, for about $5 a session. And I didn't really talk about what was going on in my head. I did talk about Roger and how tricky it was and how upsetting it was. But I mean, how many times can you talk about it? It just is. It is what it is. So after a while, she was like, how are you feeling? How are you doing these days? How are you coping? And I'd just be like, I'm coping great, because I wanted her to feel good about it. And I wanted me to feel good about it. So I thought, well, this is what you do. You go to therapy, you feel good about things, and then you move on. This is great.
Right.
And then but by then I'm performing as a regular thing. I started performing music, and that was the thing that really did make me feel really good. Meeting people who seemed to accept who I was. I would have jobs where I couldn't really connect with the boss. Would just always so many weirdos in the world that made me feel uncomfortable. And then I started seeing another therapist. Yeah, I saw so many therapists, and I could never really express what it was that was my problem.
You just felt like you didn't adapt to the social construct that everybody else seemed to seamlessly fold into.
Well, I
Am I hearing
could.
that right?
I could do the work.
Like you
but
could put
it
on the mask.
For sure, but I found that I would meet people and I would take on their accent. I would take on the way the staccato nature of their.
But I do this too.
Well, it's interesting because it's a trait. It's a trait in neurodivergence. It's a thing called mirroring. For me, in my brain, it's just delightful. I love the sound of people's voice. I love the cadence of people's voices, and I love accents, and I love hearing about where other people are. And it's a good way for me to not have to talk about myself, is to ask people questions. So hearing back from them and just taking on what they're saying. So I found that was a trait that was kind of weird, that was really awkward, because I would have different groups of friends and I would sound different in different groups of friends. And if the worlds collided, it was very stressful for me. So I would work sort of at not letting the worlds collide.
Interesting.
So there was a lot of work
Because
involved.
which Arlene are you going to be?
Which Arlene am I going to be? Which all felt, I guess, real, all true, but am I? Is I? I don't know what's going on in my head. It was very, yeah. But then a good thing would happen in my life, and I'd get swept up in that. Like I got swept up in Blair, my life with Blair. We had a wonderful life together, and it was all very good for a really long time. And I didn't really have to think about these things until my brain, I would fall into, now I understand it, burnout. I was having recurring episodes of burnout, which were being treated as depression. But I couldn't take antidepressants because I had the opposite effect.
And just so I have a little context, are we in the 90s here? Like, where are we in the...
Yeah, I guess we're sort of, the 90s just sort of flew by, right? The 90s was a lot of music and a lot of touring, so I was swept along. So a lot of that is survival. I spent a lot of my life in survival mode. But when you're with somebody who cares for you and is loving, then it's easier to be in survival mode because they're taking care of you. That is an easier thing, but it wears off after a certain point. There's no amount of downtime that would help.
Okay, now I'm still in listening mode here. So like at some point you pursue a diagnosis? Like, is this like you're seeking a diagnosis so that, because if you have a diagnosis, you can get treatment? Is that the idea?
I sought a diagnosis because I was genuinely concerned that I was losing the plot. I had been to a number of therapies. I'd been to, in psychoanalysis, I'd been to transactional analysis. I'd been into cognitive behavioral therapy, lots of different things. And they all worked for a really short time, but I found them all fascinating. I would sort of get swept up in the theories behind them and embrace them and that sort of research. That was all really calming. But when the pandemic happened, right? I'm such a common story in this way. When the pandemic happened and everybody else was like upset that they couldn't go out and do things and tour and see people and go to parties and stuff, I was like, right on. This is fantastic. We're going to stay at home. Excellent.
Right.
I love this. This is great. And I started, I contacted Long and McQuaid, and I got a little recording set up. I thought, the experts were saying this is going to take years, and I thought, sweet. Well, then I better get a studio set up.
Right.
This is my opportunity. I don't have to explain to other people why I don't want to go out and do stuff. I'm just going to sit in my little space and see what I can do, see about banging this stuff out. And that was fine, and it was great. And of course, I started missing people, and things happened, and people got sick, and people died, and that all was freaked out. But other than that, it was a good time. And then all my family was there. My mother, I rescued my mother from Texas, where her after my dad had passed, she remarried, and he died. And so there she was in Texas after having this life-threatening thing that happened to her. So brought her home. And so we had a house full of people with a dog and a cat. And there's Yod, my partner, and Owen, my son, and my mom, Judy. And I'm making this album. And then there's talk about how we're going to reopen. And I thought, okay, well, that's what I'll do too. I'm gonna go to poetry readings. I'm going to go to shows, and I'm gonna see everybody's. I'm going to connect with everybody, and I'm going to go to coffee, and I'm going to go to your house, and you're going to come to my house, and it's just going to be the most amazing thing. And I absolutely couldn't do it. It made me really sick. I started experiencing these symptoms, which I had experienced my whole life, this gut issues, which had been diagnosed as being celiac and having abdominal migraines. And then I would have these migraines in my head. So I had them my whole life. They would come, I would get sick for a little while, and then they would go. But towards the end of the pandemic, I had them constantly. I was constantly in bed. I was sick all the time. And I would go out, and I would try to do a thing, and then I would crash again. And my head was being really mean to me inside. My inner monologue, which I'd always had, which is always the thing that's just pushing me forward, which I thought was, well, these are my parent voices encouraging me to do things. Well, they were really mean now. They wanted me to do 10 things at a time, and all of them, I was doing a crap version of all of them, and I should know better, and how could I dare even try? And it was just being so hard on me. So I was trapped, my body was trapped in bed, and my brain was flying at 1,000 miles an hour. And I found that trying to keep it together, trying to have conversations with people, I couldn't keep track of what it was that I was thinking or what it was that I was saying. And I thought, I'm losing it. I'm totally losing it. So I thought, I got to get some therapy. I contact my doctor, and he's like, yeah, for sure, we'll get you hooked up. The waiting list is currently 24 months.
Oh my goodness.
So I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? Okay, well, I'll do the thing that I've always been good at. I'm going to research. I'm going to look at this myself. And now, it used to be books, but now the internet, there is the internet. So I start putting my symptoms in the internet. And Owen is playing a podcast one day, and he comes down and he says, have you heard this thing about inner monologue? And I'm like, no, what is it? And he's like, you have an inner monologue, right? And I'm like, yeah. And he says, well, turns out only like 20% of the population has an inner monologue. I'm like, what?
Okay, can you just explain what this is? This the narration of what's going on in your head?
There's a couple of different
only
things.
20%. Okay, you tell me what it is.
It basically is, for me, it is a narration, or it's a scripting. Before I got here, we had this conversation a number of times where I would figure out what it was that I was going to say. And then you asked me a whole bunch of stuff that I never even expected. So it was really...
Right. Well, I got to get you off that script there. But that voice that you're hearing is your own voice, right?
I think, it is my own voice. It is I was afraid.
But you're saying that 80% of people don't have this?
Yeah, it's something like that. The statistic might not be correct.
We won't hold you to
yes, they don't have this monologuing where I am walking, I am sitting, this is happening.
You're living in Arrested Development, and you got Ron Howard's kind of...
That is true, but I'm also, I'm on meds now, so it's a little bit better, but I'm also getting other information. My brain is reading the signs in your studio. And it's reading them aloud to me. And it's reading the labels on things.
Okay.
And it's sorting things out. Yeah.
I find this fascinating.
It's a lot of work. It's exhausting.
But
and it's noisy. It's so noisy in my head.
Like the actual we'll call it a narrator or whatever, of your life. Like when you're, I do this happens to be on bike rides, but it happens to be, I have that all the time. Like but it's not I guess it's just like how to cope with life, how to manage life. And it's like, it'll be things like I had visualized our conversation before you got here. Like I kind of I was chatting with Blair Packham of all people about like what I was planning to do, which is I could see I was going to do 45 minutes kind of on your career. We would talk about Roger. We would cover the $1 million and 98, what's it called? I almost called it
98
I almost called it 98 degrees. That's a whole different thing here. You have nothing to do with that one. Okay. But then I wanted to have this conversation because it has somewhat applies to me in my personal life, and I have a passion for this subject matter, to hear your experience in this. So all that, yes, I have these episodes happen in my mind before these episodes happen. Like that's sort of always going. But I actually just assumed, I've never had this conversation with anyone before, but I just assumed everyone had that.
I know.
Like how do you manage? Like,
I assumed everyone had that as well. But when I don't know, when I'm walking along, I'll say to myself, that's green. There's an interesting brown there.
Of course,
look at the way
yeah.
the clouds fit into each other.
Yeah.
That is always happening. But no. Congratulations and welcome.
Okay, we're in the 20% club.
We are in we are in a minority.
Well, now I'm going to be first thing I'm going to do when you leave, ask my wife if I've never even considered asking anyone this
Ask
before.
her.
She's
Yeah.
upstairs. Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating? It's a fascinating thing. So that got me down this a bit of a rabbit hole on brains. So what kind of brain has that monologuing
Do
that's
tell.
going on?
I'm very interested to hear.
Well, those are quite often, I understand statistically significant number of those brains are neurodivergent. Neurodivergence being a developmental thing that happens in your brain. It happens at our very initial cell division before we're a zygote. Our brains are developing neurodivergently. We just make different kinds of connections.
Okay, now you talked about this 24-month wait, but you didn't have to wait 24 months, did you?
Well, I didn't have to wait 24 months because I'd started looking online, and from the inner monologue that took me over to ADHD, where I saw a couple like, do you have ADHD? Somebody saying in first person, I discovered that I had ADHD, so I watched her video, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have these traits that she's describing.
I'm not gonna again. You're not what is this disclaimer? We'll do that. You are not a doctor. You are not a psychiatrist. This is for therapeutic purposes, informational. Your experience. Okay, but do you remember any of these traits that made you realize, hey, maybe I'm ADHD?
Yeah, well, that voice, that telling me to do things, yes, that was one of them. The scatteredness, that was another thing. But, it's not all negative traits. That's why...
Well, this is what I want to ask you. Like, what do you mean by scatteredness? Like, are you late for appointments?
Scatteredness, as in a project for me, is never a single channel. It's never one thing. For years now, I don't just make an album. I make an experience. Because there's more to it for me, all these different connections, and I feel compelled to explore them.
But you're an artist.
I am an artist. Yes, I am an artist, but a lot of artists just make a record. They just make an album. But I make an album, and I make a film, and I make a vlog series. And
it's an immersive experience.
And I have a 3-day festival of everybody else being involved. And I need to involve 31 other people to sing with me.
But you get this accomplished, right? Like again, I'm not a psychiatrist either, except that my wife happens to think I'm neurodivergent. So I've done the same kind of reading, but where I always get stuck is it sounds like many people who afflicted with ADHD, I don't even know the proper semantics for that, but have ADHD. It sounds like many of them have difficulty, keeping a job and keeping a schedule, and they're often late for things. Like this scatteredness, what you're describing sounds more like you bite off more than you can chew, and then you chew it.
Well, interesting. I know more about my autism than I know about my ADHD. Okay. That is absolutely for sure.
So,
because I have ADHD. I have autism, and I consider the ADHD is the thing that burns me out.
Okay.
It keeps me going. It makes me go. It doesn't tell me to plug in my battery when my battery is low.
Right.
It just wants me to keep going, and I'm excited and I'm exhilarated, and that's where I want to be in the universe. So why would I ever shut that down? I want to
Yes.
be engaged. I
Right.
want to be fascinated.
Because you get a high off of this, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and I want to be connected with things, and I want that dopamine, and I need that dopamine. That's the tricky part, is needing it. So why do people have a hard time in their workplace? Because sometimes they say the stupid thing to the boss, or they
Yeah, the
they get
filter
bored.
doesn't
The
function.
filter might not work, or
you're,
their
you're
task
reading from my
list.
playbook here. Okay.
Their task list is this, which they can do very well for this amount of time, and then they want to do this other thing over here, and so it's a problem in the workplace. They're not supposed to
So
be
they have
doing that other thing.
typically
Or they
it
get
would
bored.
be
We
yes.
just get
You
bored.
get yes. Okay, which is the kiss. In this project I'm doing right now, I've always said, and I mean it because I know I've been alive for 5 decades now, and I know myself rather well, that the minute I'm bored, it's over. Like the minute I'm
Yeah,
bored,
that's
it's
it.
over.
That's it. That's right. So it's a special interest. Our neurodivergence allows us or encourages us to jump in and enjoy it. And the tricky part is that we might not know when it's going to be over.
So let me ask, I'm going to make some assumptions here, and you can tell me, oh, Mike, that's off base or whatever. But okay, so it sounds like you initially self-diagnosed as ADHD.
I started identifying with ADHD, but I didn't have all the traits. But YouTube's algorithm, as it does, it said, well, what about autism? And autism got me right away.
Okay.
These are my traits.
Have you ever been diagnosed with such by a psychiatrist?
I have been diagnosed through an organization called EmbraceAutism.com. So that is a psychoanalyst. Those are clinicians there who are certified to do this job. And that was what was available during the pandemic. There, you can get online, you can do just an online screening yourself. You don't have to submit the test to anything. You could just take a look. Because there are markers, there are traits, there are hundreds of traits, and where you sit with those traits, with the how often it happens, how intensely it happens, and what the outcomes of it happening, that's where you find yourself on the spectrum.
Fascinating. Okay, so it's too many questions are hitting my head right now. Except, how surprised were you when you were diagnosed as not just having ADHD, but being autistic?
Blown away. My mind was blown. For one thing, I was ignorant, and I had never consciously thought it, but I thought that autism was only that thing that I have seen in
I know where you're going to go. Rain
yes,
Man.
Yes, Rain Man, or the non-verbal child.
Where it's all happening in his snow globe.
That's what I thought it was. And that's been the depiction forever. And I am part of a wave of people. For one thing, you know that women didn't even have autism until 2 DSMs ago. Like, it wasn't even an option.
No.
And people of color didn't have autism. And it was an exclusive domain of wealthy white boys whose parents could afford to have them diagnosed. And then there's a whole lot of crazy, scary stuff in there about it being called Asperger's and what it meant for you to be able to live if you were diagnosed in the right kind of Asperger way.
So what have you, I mean, this is a big question. Take your time answering it. But so you get the diagnosis, autistic with ADHD. How does that change things? Like, you have the wow moment, but then, because this is a fairly recent diagnosis.
Yeah, it is. So the end of 2023, I did my online assessments. So you can just do the screening, and then you could go to the next level and actually have them look at your assessments and do interviews and talk about it. So that's what I did. I decided to spend a mortgage payment. I talked to my partner. I talked to my son. I talked to my ex-partner, and we all agreed, yeah, it does seem like a good idea. Basically everybody said, Arlene, if you feel that this is the thing for you, you should pursue it. So I did, and I did all these tests, and I got back to all these scales. It's like, neurotypicals generally 45 and under. This is what they rate at number 45, and you're at 125. It's like, oh yeah, so you are definitely on the scale. So yeah, I can't remember what you were
Well,
asking.
it's okay.
me.
Well, let me just bring in Radio Lady, who has a great question because you talked about burnout. What is the difference between burnout and depression?
Oh, well, I think depression, there's different kinds of depression. There's situational depression where it's depressing
your
things
dog died.
happen. Yes, it's depressing.
It's like
It's very sad,
environmental
yeah.
cause.
And then there's a chemical component where you're not in control of it. You can't, there's
the
a
dark cloud follows you.
exactly. The dark cloud, it inhibits you from finding joy in anything. And the difference, I think, with burnout, with autism burnout, with autistic burnout and ADHD burnout, is that the joy, I crave the joy. I want it, but I can't. My body won't do. My brain won't do. My body won't do. And then there are physical symptoms. There's sickness.
So these you talked earlier about like the you thought it was celiac.
Yeah, it is, and it
Oh,
is
it is
celiac.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's why you can't have
But
your lasagna.
that's a common. Those are called comorbidities.
Interesting.
Comorbidities, and they're very common. I mean, psychically, right? This is one of the therapies that I pursued a long time ago, not that long ago, because I've been looking for years for what the heck is it? Is it some sort of metaphysical thing? Do I have headaches because metaphysically I'm carrying too much of a burden
Yeah, like
on my
stress.
shoulders? Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
But the stress is going to work. The stress is getting up and taking the bus. Why is taking the bus so freaking stressful for me? Why is that? Why is following a map like the biggest freaking deal? Everybody else can follow a map.
And
What's
that's
my
not
problem?
again part of my ignorance, but that's not anxiety.
Anxiety is a comorbidity. You can be diagnosed with anxiety. That can be a separate thing that you can receive medication from. But anxiety is a naturally occurring thing when you're about to enter a group of people and you're wondering, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen in this interaction? I feel anxious about it.
Well, yeah, like it's like you're sitting down with Chuck D. You get one shot at this. If you don't have a little anxiety, like that sort of helps you, I suppose,
A
to
lot of
elevate
people-
to a.
Well, where it becomes a clinical issue, where it becomes an important issue, is when it's stopping you from achieving things that you want to do in your life. Anxiety drives us forward. That's why I'm anxious about gaining weight, and so I'm going to exercise. There can be a positive outcome. It's a natural. These are natural. They're human traits. They're not that they're not human traits. It has to do with the level and the interruption, the severity, and the long-term effects.
Canada Kev, who came up earlier, because he, went to the Cabana room with you. You introduced great time, Canada Kev.
Hey, Canada Kev.
Canada Kev says anxiety, depression, ADD, the holy triumvirate of comorbidities.
Yeah.
Okay, and he also says he thinks your explanation of all this is it's excellent and that you're speaking to him 100%. Looking, analyzing, predicting, repeat. He says, but it's also a superpower. So let me just pick up on that for a moment here. So, and again, I'm going to be very open about a lot going on here, but people close to me have been telling me for a very long time that I may I could also possibly be diagnosed as such. And I think on my life and my day-to-day, and this also ties in, you talk about burnout. I feel like I've almost like I'm trying to see how do I reach this burnout. Like it's almost like a goal of mine, and I'll let you know when I get there. But okay, I digress. So I have to bike a crazy amount. Like I biked 14,000
Right.
kilometers and like on the streets, not on a
That's
I
insane.
know, 14,000
I mean,
kilometers.
right
No,
on.
okay, well, there's a thin line between right on and insane. It's a thin line. You're just walking on it or whatever. But then I'm like, yeah, I happen to have the 4 kids. But then I'm like, yeah, I recorded like, I don't know, over 200 episodes of Toronto Mic'd in 2024, right? Meanwhile, I'm trying to make money to send 4 kids to university, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and live in Toronto, which, as you know, you got to be a multimillionaire now. No more, cheap rent here. Okay. So all of this is to say that I don't, and again, just about me and we'll get right back to you, but I don't miss any appointments. Now I do, my wife will tell me, because we have this conversation many times, and I'll say, I'm literally 10 minutes early for everything.
Right. Well, you're one of those people who say better 10 minutes early than 3 minutes late.
Right.
And
I always build in a little buffer. So I'm never late. Like literally for anything. And there's lots going on. The
do you
calendar's
wonder
full.
why it is that you don't want to be late?
I thought it's because you're not supposed to be late for things, but you
Right.
tell me.
Well, no, that can be your anxiety talking,
Okay.
but good for you. So
Okay,
that's
but
you
I use
probably
Google.
have
I use Google Calendar
right.
as my lifeline, and everything goes in there, like my everything. So
Right.
the bike. This is the bike ride time. This is like the lunch time. This is you got to call here. You drop your daughter off at the YMCA at this time. You got to pick up like everything, and I mean everything is in the Google Calendar, and I follow it to a T. And the day before, I know exactly what's going. I know at 11 o'clock, Arlene Bishop's going to be here, and then blah 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 blah. So I use the Google Calendar to not be late for anything. But at this, and also I've been doing this. Like the thing we're doing right now, I've been doing for how many years have I been doing this? 11 years or something like that? 12 years, I guess. But I do feel like a lot of what you're describing there, I have as well. But it's like I consider it, and Canada Kev used this word on the live stream, my superpower. Like I have these multi thoughts, and I can pull it down and connect these dots, and I can multitask. I feel like better than most people, and I can complete tasks on time, and it'll be well done. Like I feel like I personally, speaking for Mike, I would never want to treat this with any medication because I like how this brain works, and I feel it is my strength.
Super sweet. So what you're describing a bunch of tools that you use. So your calendar. So if you're if you didn't have your Google tools, you would have to find other tools.
Well, I would. What I did in University of Toronto was I had an actual paper agenda, and I just wrote it out.
So you worked out that coping mechanism a long time ago to achieve your goals, and that's awesome. And you do one thing. You already do a chemical thing with your exercising, with your cycling. That's a really big component. That's one of the pieces of advice that people are given, to get out into the world. That's an important thing. Out into the air, into the sun, into the air, and exercise, move your body. That is a common solution. So good for you.
It really is my medicine. And when I stumbled upon, so what happened was I realized I wasn't tired at night. Like I was just so wired at night.
Right.
And I wanted to feel tired at nighttime so I could sleep. Like this was my desire. And I discovered, like just through trial and error, I discovered if I went out and did 30 kilometers of biking every day, and I literally, that was a number. Like if I targeted and I measure every ride, because I have to measure everything
Right.
in my app. So if I hit 30K,
That's a trait. That's a
well,
trait.
I definitely am guilty of that. I can tell you exactly how many kilometers every day, blah, blah, blah. But I have to hit 30K a day in order to, whatever time I end up in bed, 11:30, 11 o'clock, whatever, to be sleepy enough to fall asleep and have a night's sleep. So it is my medicine for sure. Like, and I know this, but it's not just the physical sleep thing. It absolutely is where I solve all my problems. Like I go on the bike ride, and I guess it's like meditation in some sort, where others would meditate or whatever, but I can kind of collect all the things I need to, what am I going to do here? What's my plan for this? And this narration kind of comes in and guides me. And again, I feel like it's too much about me here, except that I do admit that the cycling is my medicine.
That's super sweet. That's so awesome that you found it. And that's one of the cool things about it actually being a spectrum, that no two neurodivergent brains are the same. You've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, you've met one ADHD person, you have met one ADHD person, that's it. So where you are in those traits, it's manageable for you. If you wanted to get clinical, you could probably find some areas where it's not working for you, and maybe you don't explore those areas.
Well,
and you might look at your relationship with your family and your wife and see how much work that they're doing to compensate for your shortcomings. But it doesn't matter. It works.
But I'm sure there is, and you're very good at this actually, because you probably already know that. But there is a fear that if there are things, because of course I'm not a perfect person, and there are places I can see where I suffer, like in my personal life and stuff, because of this. And then my fear is if I address that, I'll be giving up the superpower in the places where I use it, and it benefits me, and it really benefits me.
Our culture is built on superpower. We like to believe that we have superpowers. So we will give just about anything a superpower moniker. So that we feel good about it. There's nothing to feel bad about.
Right.
It's good for you. It totally works for you. But you know what? There's probably about 1 million people shouting out, "I wish I could get on my bicycle." There are some people who can't even cycle because their traits create a certain kind of paralysis.
And I would hope that these are people who would seek the diagnosis in order to be properly treated. I feel like
Yeah.
we've come, you mentioned the same things. We're similar vintage, and we were autism spectrum. We didn't even call it the spectrum back then, but autistic people were like Dustin Hoffman and Rain Man, and the kid who couldn't talk and looked in a snow globe, and then whatever St. Elsewhere was happening or whatever the heck was going on. Like that was it. And when I think back, I read a piece because in the FOTM chat we knew you were coming over, and we were chatting about you in this conversation, and I think it was Kev maybe who said that. Oh no, it wasn't Kev, but somebody pointed out Gen Xers who were diagnosed as not diagnosed, who were told they were gifted and put into a gifted program, often later in life realize that it's actually either they're on the autism spectrum or ADHD or a combination.
Well, part of the superpowers that are so awesome for autism, it's like pattern recognition. That's where your Rain Man comes in.
Right.
That's where his particular, although I think clinically now the way that character is described is not having autism. He's savant. He is a savant something or other. So these being able to identify patterns, being able to have almost a super hearing, which is awesome, that you can hear, like a producer, for example, can hear a certain tone that they want to bring out.
Right.
But they might also hear the stupid streetcar that is very distracting and
Right.
upsetting, and it keeps them awake at night. So their ears, it's that the challenge is how can I manage this? How can I shut my ears to certain things? So you
Right.
learn the wonderful thing about the internet. When we talked earlier about what is the point of getting diagnosed, because no, there aren't any supports. Yes, for ADHD there are supports. There's talk therapy, and there are medications, a bunch of different kind of medications that you can try. For autism, for adult autism, no, there are no supports. There's no government supports. There's nothing. There might be a therapist or two who has a clue, but it's really an emerging field.
And I'm sure the true benefit of such a diagnosis as an adult is to explain all that shit that you didn't understand. Why am I
Look,
like this?
The most important thing for me was not feeling like a freak, not feeling like a loser, not feeling like an alien. It's really an uncomfortable feeling to be sitting at a table full of people who are having a delightful conversation that chat back and forth, and they're throwing things around, and suddenly it's like they're speaking another language and I can't understand it, and somebody turns to me and asks me something and I don't even understand what they've just asked me. So I gotta go. I gotta separate myself from this thing. And that I now understand what that specific situation was at Mia Sheard's kitchen table at that Christmas party, was that I was getting overwhelmed. I was having a sensory overload of information.
You must be so relieved.
I'm totally relieved. I thought I was, specifically during the pandemic, after when we were decided that it didn't exist anymore, I thought that am I developing dementia? Like, what is going on in my brain?
Right.
Why can't I handle going to the grocery store? Why does it smell so much in here? And you know what? The thing about being a celiac, an overload for me, it's overwhelming, is to be describing it, is to be explaining it, is to be excusing it. When people invite me over for dinner, well, what can you eat? Can you eat rice? Can you eat potatoes? And well, yes, I can. What are you going to put are you going to put soy sauce on the rice? Because no, then I can't eat that. But I hate to be the princess.
Right.
I just want to be in charge of my foods. But that's also an autism thing. I have my safe foods that I know that I can eat, and I don't want to have to explain it to anybody.
You know what? I want to absolutely this is that awkward moment where I tell you never did give me a damn gift, Arlene. Okay,
Oh,
you
no, but I
teased me
do.
with a gift.
Here,
Okay,
look
so,
at what I have
so
for
give
you.
me the gift now, because I want to talk about this.
I got this.
Okay, your shirt, it's a black t-shirt. It says coping. I'm literally going to put it on for I don't care how cold it is outside. I'm going to wear that t-shirt for our photo that we're going to take after this conversation.
Oh, sweet.
But tell me about coping mechanism, unmasking my late autism diagnosis.
Yeah, so coping mechanism, that's what, when I got that set up, when I got the MIDI set up from Long and McQuaid at the beginning of the pandemic, and I started banging away at it and trying to figure out how to work, this is what came out. This is the album that came out. And I wasn't singing. Normally I sing. I'm a big lyrics person, but I couldn't stand to hear myself talk. It's just like, oh, I'm so sick of hearing my complaints about whatever the heck it is that I'm complaining about. It really was just about what's going on in my brain, and can I do some sort of soundtrack to what's happening in my brain? Not can I communicate with, I don't know what I wasn't trying to communicate any message to anybody, just to myself. What is going on? See, this particular track here, this is about so many ideas, and I'm going in different directions, and the outside world is just so fascinating. I can hear patterns developing, and I just love the feel and the sounds of things. So developing those tracks, the coping mechanism tracks, while I was learning about my brain and understanding, oh, that's what this is about. This is not a song about breakup. This is not a song about falling in love. This is a song that I wrote about, having a meltdown. That's what it is. That's what that situation is.
Because as you shared with us earlier, you don't just drop an album, okay? Arlene Bishop doesn't just drop an album. There's an immersive, full multimedia experience that's going to come along with this.
Yeah, so I made the album, and then I thought, well, now that I have depicted to myself what I can see in my brain, can I then show that externally? So then I made a film, the coping mechanism,
which I watched.
Film. Oh, you did?
Yeah, I
Thank
watched
you
it
very
on.
much for
So
watching.
shout out. So where on YouTube can we find all of this?
Well, you can find it all. I created a challenge called a challenge. It is a challenge. It is a challenge.
It's a Freudian
to
slip, I
myself.
think.
I created a challenge. I mean, I have my Arlene Bishop YouTube channel at Arlene Bishop, but I also have this new channel called Artist on the Spectrum, looking at what does it mean? Is that why I'm an artist? Is that why you're an artist? Is because you're on the spectrum? Is that why all the people that I know? Is that why we get along? Do we have a same kind of neurodivergent brain? All these years,
Like this need for a deep dive, for example. Why did you spend 2.5 hours on Tears Are Not Enough?
all these years of PR people asking me, well, describe your audience. What's
Right.
their age? What's their gender? What's their occupation? And I could never. But now I think my audience is neurodivergent. That's who they are.
Fascinating. And now that you have this diagnosis, and this is called coping mechanism, and go to, so what was the name of the specific, is it called coping? What is the name of the
It's
YouTube
called
channel?
Artist on the Spectrum.
Artist with an S?
Artist,
Okay.
Artist.
Okay, no S. Okay. Artist on the Spectrum is where you search that in YouTube. You'll find the channel, and you'll get to watch the. I think it's about 26 minutes. But the multimedia project of coping mechanism. This you used the word challenge before, but it's like the challenges of unmasking. You talk about your diagnosis.
Yeah, it's that conflict between my autism brain and my ADHD brain. My ADHD brain is the project manager, it's the coach, it's the go, and you do it. And my autism is the magical, let's figure out where we fit in the universe part of me. And I had to wait for those two parts of myself to be able to work together.
And have you figured out, now that you have this diagnosis and you're learning so much about yourself, and are you able to prevent burnout?
Well, I'm in burnout now. I'm working
you're
my
in
way out
burnout.
of burnout. Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't even tell. You hide it well. Okay, you've masked up. I didn't
My
even
life
know.
is pretty small right now. It's just my life right now is about going from day to day in things that I'm still learning. I'm learning what my sensory deprivations are. I mean, I'm wearing my blue blocking glasses today so that I hopefully don't get a headache from being in a different environment, different stresses, absorbing all the information, all the different colors and the lights, right? I'm trying to figure out from day to day. I'm trying to figure out to feel better. I can't go out. You invite me to a party, I'm not going to come to your party. That's too much for me right now. I can't, the idea of doing a show,
you get to
the
come
idea of
out.
doing
Like,
a
how do you
gig,
how do you pull yourself out of this burnout?
I'm not quite sure. Well, one of the huge benefit to being diagnosed, or even, self-identification is totally valid in the autism world, completely valid, because it is an emergent field. This thing about women, for example, only 2 DSMs ago, it's not like, not everybody has a mortgage payment to spend on getting an assessment. So if this feels right to you, what the heck, go with it, go with it. So, but understanding that that's what's going on in my brain, I can find what are called accommodations. So the accommodations for me, I have to do things like try to have a real bedtime, tell myself what my bedtime is.
Structure.
I need structure. My autistic brain likes routine and structure, and I'm not going to be sad about it, because you know what? A lot of artists are like, hey, man, go with the flow. Yeah, I can go with the flow, but it'll take me to burnout, because my ADHD brain is like, let's go with the flow forever. We don't need to sleep. We don't need to eat. We don't need to drink water. Just go, 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 which is very productive. But at the end of every project, I crash.
Interesting. I think, I guess I want to thank you that you share so openly all of this. Like, I feel like we don't talk about this enough. And like, you sort of live in, do you think everybody's got the same things you've got
No,
going
we
on?
don't. Like, I'm too exhausted at the end of every project. I can't do PR. I can't do any of that stuff. That's for one
well,
thing.
you did get here for a
I
90-minute convo, a heavy 90-minute convo here.
Thank you
Arlene.
for having me. Thank you for being interested
But
in
do you
this.
think maybe you were able to come here, you felt some comfort in that your son could sort of said, I met this guy, I've seen him record. And
Absolutely, I felt safe. I felt safe doing it. Both Blair
you're not, although
and
you can't
Owen.
hear his voice right now, but the fact that Blair was here for the journey.
Yeah.
Like, he was in real time. You know, he's not watching a recording. He's watching us in real time. And we even, brought in some of his comments in real time. So fascinating. And I'm very honored that you were here and sharing, because I have a personal interest in your journey, because I don't think it's dissimilar to my own. I just feel like I feel like I'm just a little bit behind you here. And I think it does help explain stuff in your life that never made sense. Like, why does my brain think that way? Like, why did I behave this way? And all this stuff. And I think the diagnosis absolutely will explain, like, okay, this is why you acted that way or felt that way.
It's huge.
And that's invaluable. Like, it's not all about getting, there might not be a pill that you take when an adult's diagnosed with autism or whatever, but just having this awareness of, oh, that's why I was such a picky eater as a kid. Like, there's a long list of things.
That's why I can't converse with that person. That person is full on neurotypical. And that's why they look at me like I'm a freak, because our brains are totally different.
And now you know you're not a freak.
I'm not a freak.
That should be the next T-shirt.
I am a neurodivergent. I'm a perfectly normal neurodivergent person.
And thank you for my T-shirt. A couple of things on the way out here. Again, everybody go to the YouTube channel and drink in Coping Mechanism. And the short film, I watched it all, stream of consciousness imagery, and then your music that underscores it. I really enjoyed it very much. Couple of things. One is, I'm going to just ask you rapid fire about a few people that I'm interested in that you cross paths with. So this will be very brief, because we talked about Ron Sexsmith, and we talked about Barenaked Ladies, and we talked about the Jitters, okay? And Bob Snyder, for example. These people have all come up. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about Jane Siberry.
Oh, Jane Siberry. She is such a sweet person. She's a lovely person. The first time I met Jane Siberry, I didn't actually meet her. I was working at a bar. It was late at night. I was waiting for a cab to arrive. She was waiting for a cab to arrive. Some creepy guys in a car drove by and yelled something super rude. And she said, "What a bunch of assholes." And we laughed. So that was my first interaction. And we've interacted a few times in our lives. And I totally enjoy her. She's awesome.
Well, I believe it's your ex-husband who introduced me to Jane, and I got her on the program, and I dropped this fun fact on her, and she did not find it that interesting, the fun fact. And in real time, I was personally devastated that somebody would be so cutting and curt to say that my fun fact, which I thought was more of a mind blow than a fun fact, was not that interesting.
Maybe she's neurodivergent.
Yeah,
that is a neurodivergent
it
trait.
Explains everything.
To be brutally honest accidentally.
I've been told,
you know what? Sometimes
blunt.
it takes time to absorb what has actually happened. So later she might have thought, "Oh man, that was awesome."
You got to process that. That was too much to process in real time there. Paul Myers.
Yeah, it's Paul Myers, one of my favorite people on the planet.
Okay, Paul Myers, who was in the Gravelberries, and I know he lives in California now. I think your ex-husband house sits for the guy.
He and I love Paul. He and I get to do one of the funniest things. We get to make each other laugh. And I love to make Paul laugh, because he's a very funny person, and he's generous with his laughter, but I can make him genuinely laugh. I like that.
There's some good humor in that family. Absolutely. Okay. How about the Real Statics?
Real Statics are sweet people. They're nice people, and I love Marty. Martin Tielli, he's an awesome person.
Okay, do we know how he's? I feel like he's off the grid, or I see. Have you had contact with him recently?
I have not, but my partner Yod has. You know what? He's just a dude being a dude.
Okay,
He's
I want to
awesome.
talk to him.
Well, he's.
I don't know how to get to him. He seems to be off the beaten path here. I gotta find a way. Maybe Yod is my connect. I don't know.
Could be.
Okay, I'm gonna work on that. That's awesome. So yeah, Real Statics, love it. And how about just closing out? The first band I ever saw live was Chalk Circle. So Chris Tate,
Chris
Chalk Circle.
Tate. Chris Tate mixed this album. Chris Tate is also another person. Chris Tate gave me the advice a long time ago. He said, he gave me two pieces of advice. One was, we're going to sing on something now. Just open your face and let your voice fall out. And the other thing is don't stress out about forgetting lyrics. Just make sounds, and the words will come to you.
I once tried to book that very Chris Tate and accidentally booked a different Toronto musician named Chris Tate.
Really?
Yeah. It's the only time that's actually very unlikely to ever happen, actually. But I guess when you do 1,600 episodes, weird shit's going to happen.
Interesting.
But so I ended up, then I actually got the Chalk Circle Chris Tate. I got his phone number and I told him the story. And I said, I thought I was talking because it was only through email or whatever. And it was it's too much similarities. Like a Chris Tate, Toronto musician, playing a lot of the similar venues, also working for like an ad agency. Like it was too much.
That's weird.
Yeah, too much. And then I got the wrong Chris Tate, but it was a great episode. I did a great episode.
Does he know? Does he know you're calling him the wrong Chris Tate?
Well, you know what? That's
Chris
true.
Tate?
That's rude. That's rude. Because as Ron Hawkins from Lowest of the Low told me, I didn't get the wrong Chris Tate. I got the right Chris Tate. They're both the right Chris Tates,
Right,
of course.
that's right.
So I ended up getting both Chris Tates, and it's a great story in the Toronto Mic.
You got a double
right?
Chris Tate. Isn't that funny?
I know.
It's good that one's not the evil Chris Tate and one's the
Well, you know what?
the
It
good
could have been
Chris Tate.
worse, right? And it worked out fine. But I have a request on the live stream. Do you have a Martin Tielli Taylor Swift story?
Oh, well, what can I tell you about Martin Tielli and Taylor Swift? Okay, well, here it is. My person, Yod Sylvester, is a musician. He had a band called Wayne Omaha, and he's with the Trabian Ensemble, and he is connected to the Rio Statics. They've been playing together for years, and he and Martin are good buddies. But Yod is also a chef, and he cooks at a restaurant called the Intersteer. So when Marty's in town, he will go to the Intersteer. And that's just a little backstory to tell you that one evening I'm looking at Facebook and Marty posts that, or a pseudonym posts that that Taylor Swift is at the Intersteer. And
Wow.
I thought to myself, oh buddy, I wonder what's going to happen with that. And then what happened with that is that a bunch of news outlets picked it up, and oh boy, I don't want to ruin things. It was difficult to confirm that she was at the Intersteer.
And no photo evidence exists of
No,
this?
none at all.
Oh, geez. No pics. It didn't happen. You know what the
Although
rules are
Owen
now.
did make Yada a coffee cup that says that Taylor Swift
was here?
was not
Oh,
at
was
the
not.
Intersteer. Yeah.
Interesting. That's amazing. Okay, and last, on our way out, and again, I don't want to bring you down before you go, but I'm curious about your coping mechanism here because of everything we've talked about over the last 90 minutes, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But the world is on fire, Arlene. So my question is this. Okay, so like literally, like between the time I woke up and this moment right now, our prime minister has resigned, I believe. Okay?
Right.
Like this
right,
happened
right,
today.
Right.
So that's happening. When an election will be called at some point, and
So
it's-
he has resigned. That means Trump is going to claim victory, and he's going to elevate that other jerk. And here it comes.
Well,
Here comes.
how
a
do you
big
cope
pile
with
of
this? Like,
lies.
how do you cope with the fact today, I think, is the day you certify the electoral college votes?
I have a hard time with it. You know, one of my special interests, which is a neurodivergent trait, is to develop special interests. One of my special interests is Donald Trump. And partly because I cannot stand the lying, I can't stand the hypocrisy, I can't stand bullies. And I really took it on myself to expose his lies, and to expose the people who are licking his boots. He's a tyrant, he's an autocrat, he's a fascist, he's a dangerous person, and nothing good is going to come of this. If the only thing that you could say is that you got a tax break, buddy, you are living on the wrong planet, because everything else is, people are going to get hurt.
Well, I
and-
empathize with
And people are getting hurt.
but how will you react personally when you, at the end of the day, because we've been, he's been.
Oh, you know what? I had to
at the end of the day, okay, because
I had to pull back when the election happened, and I thought,
Yeah.
here comes something else. Here comes some real change, and it's going to be okay. And the opposite thing
Right.
happened.
This is where
I
I'm
had
going.
to drop it. I had to let go.
Like,
I had to let
it
go.
doesn't matter
Well,
that
of course, I can't totally let go. but-
Toronto Arlene Bishop is pointing out the bald-faced lies and the hypocrisy and the bullying and all the unjust stuff we're witnessing in America right now. You can point it out 24/7, via all your channels, be it social media or whatever. You can scream it with a megaphone at Young and Blue or something. It actually doesn't matter.
It doesn't, except there might be one person. There might be one person, theoretically, for example, in one's family that needs to hear another point of view, because the way social media works, the way those algorithms work, they don't hear the other side.
But I think it's working against us, because I empathize with your thing.
We're totally screwed.
I think that it's working against us, and I think that the good example is what happened in November, which is an overwhelming electoral college. It wasn't close. It wasn't actually close.
No, it's a tiny percentage, but it doesn't matter. That's the way it works.
So how are you? But I'm
guy,
worried about
the guy who tried to overthrow the government.
Yeah, 4 years ago today, by the way.
Yeah.
4 years ago
Won
today.
because people are stupid.
Yes.
And that's really a thing that has been happening in my brain my whole life. Why are people so stupid? How do you not know? How do they not know? Why do you not go to two sources instead of just that
But you do
one
know they
source?
think you are the stupid one.
Yes, I do know that.
But in their core, they sincerely believe that to be true.
They
and the more
do.
you do what your instincts tell you to do, which is educate and raise awareness, it actually works completely against you. Because
That's true, but I know that my life is richer because in my life I have neurodivergent people. I have a racially and culturally diverse crowd around me. I have a life with tolerant people, with accepting people, a life with compassion and beauty and education and art. And those things that are really important to me, I have those things.
You're the richest woman in town.
It's true.
I love this chat. And
Thank
I love
you
my
so
t-shirts.
much. I'm so glad that we talked about this.
Well, I love the whole idea. I think my Google Calendar is my coping mechanism. So there's a lot for me to think on, and I'm gonna go for a freezing cold bike ride after this and think on everything we talked about. And I'm glad that now we're connected. I don't need Blair anymore. Okay, we're now connected one-on-one. And as I have questions in my own personal journey, I know who to talk to.
I'm here for you, buddy.
All right, thank you so much. This was amazing. And don't leave without the lasagna, because Owen will beat me up if you don't bring that home.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening. Connect with me, won't you?
How do you want people to connect with you?
Well, connect with me. Subscribe to my channel.
to
That would
YouTube
be the
channel.
best thing. Yeah, subscribe.
Absolutely. And it's great. And that brings us to the end of our 1,612th show. See, I count the episodes. That's part of it, right?
Congratulations.
Go to torontomike.com for all your Toronto Mike needs. I'm on Blue Sky at torontomike.com there. Follow me. Much love to all who made this possible. Big announcement. I'm going to make it right now as a teaser. So we're early in 2025. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome the newest Toronto Mike partner, Fusion Corp Developments, Inc. I'll have a lot more to say about the founder and CEO, Nick Iones, in the upcoming weeks. But for now, I just want to say welcome, Nick, to the TMU. Much love to Great Lakes Brewery, Palma Pasta, RecycleMyElectronics.ca, and Ridley Funeral Home. See you all Wednesday when my special guests are Altered by Mom, returning to the studio. They got great new music. I love chatting with Altered by Mom. See you all then.